Why I quit the Camino de Santiago after just 10 days. What's up everybody? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Salua and I'm a full-time digital nomad making videos about travel and how to make money online. If you are new here, please do not forget to like, share and subscribe. And now let's diving into the topic of the Camino de Santiago de Compostela and the reason why I decided to stop after 10 days. Before we dive in, disclaimer, what I'm going to share with you today is completely based on my own experience and I am sharing how I felt during the Camino, and I am not here to bash the Camino de Santiago. I still think it's a beautiful experience and I think that for some people it's life-changing, but I also think it's important to shed the light on the reality of the Camino de Santiago based on how I saw it, and I want to share my opinion about this topic. So let's dive in. Reason number one, overly crowded, overly commercialized and overly fantasized, in my opinion. When I walked the Camino, there were between 300 and 500 people walking every day. I did the Camino Frances, which is the most popular Camino, and of course I haven't done other Camino and I am sure others might be less crowded, but for me the crowd was a problem, not because other people were walking. I of course met amazing people along the way and had incredible experiences, but the reason why being crowded was a problem for me, it's because after a long day of walking I often couldn't find accommodation. Mind you, I often made a reservation, but some days it was very difficult to make reservations because everything was booked. And that is the problem number one with the Camino, was that I could not be completely doing my meditative walk because I was worried that I was not going to find a place to stay at the end of my day. So when I planned the Camino, my goal was to stay in a private room and then schedule or make a reservation the night before, because I never knew exactly how much I wanted to walk. And so it varied. Some day I walked 18 kilometers, some day I walked 32 kilometers. So it was difficult for me to make reservation ahead of time. And so when I had decided, okay, today I'm going to do 25 kilometers, I would look at all the albergues and hotels that were in the app of the Camino, and then I would call them one by one to make a reservation for a private room. And if they didn't have a private room, then I would go with the albergue, and then if they didn't have an albergue, then I would go outside of the app and I would look on booking.com, I would look at other places. And that was really a challenge for me because it was time and stress that I was taking out of my day to focus on where I was going to sleep that night. That is one of the reasons why the Camino de Santiago was a struggle for me, because I was not able to completely focus on my walk. Rather, I was stressing out about finding a place to stay for that day. And to add to this, I actually met people who didn't find a place to stay in albergues and ended up sleeping outside without a tent. So these are the things that I really don't want. I also have a video that I can show you about the city of Burgos. When we arrived in Burgos, I had called for 3 days to find a place to stay. It was all booked, and when we arrived there, the only place available was the municipality. So we went there with my friends, and there were at least 100, if not 200 people lining up outside for a couple hours to get a spot, and that was just annoying. So what I ended up doing is to call an albergue that was 12 kilometers outside of Burgos, and I ended up taking a taxi there, and then I got a room there in one of the shared room with bunk beds. So that was the situation. The next reason why I quit the Camino de Santiago, it's because I take full responsibility for this. I feel like I was somewhat unprepared, but at the same time, I think the only way to really get prepared for the Camino is to do the Camino, because I have been traveling full-time for 4 years. I am not new to traveling. I am not new to planning international trip all alone. So I had done my work when it comes to planning, knowing what to bring, where to stay. I did a whole itinerary. But when you get there and you start doing it, you realize that, okay, you cannot plan everything. So one of the things that I've done is I didn't bring a sleeping bag and I didn't bring a tent, because my goal was to stay in private rooms. And when I did, all of them had obviously blankets and covers. But then when I couldn't find a place to stay in a private room, then I had to stay in albergues. And this is where I was like, okay, I don't have a blanket, and they do not offer blankets. They also do not offer towels. I did bring a towel at the beginning, and then I realized this was heavy. It was a sports towel that I got at Decathlon. I realized that I was not using it because at the beginning I got the reservation in private rooms, and then when I find myself at albergues with no towel, I was like, oh man, this is not an experience that I want to have. I don't want to be walking 30 kilometers a day, being exhausted at the end of the day, not knowing where I'm going to sleep, not knowing if I'm going to get a towel to shower, and sleep in the cold. It happened a couple of times where I was freezing sleeping with my sweater, and I was like, this isn't it. This is not what I want. The walking part is the easy part. Everything else was a stress for me. I did not find this enjoyable. Anyway, that was my reason number 2. So I take responsibility for that one. Although now, if I had to redo it again, I might have taken a sleeping bag with me. But to be quite honest, I don't want to be crammed up in a albergue with 50 people in a room. Half of them are snoring, maybe not half of them, but a lot of people are snoring. It's a symphony of snoring here and there. You can't sleep. Even if you have earplugs, you can still hear them. People waking up at 4 in the morning to go walk as fast as possible to get to the next albergue. So by the time I get there, but there's no more room because I cannot walk at my own pace. And I don't do small days, I walk long days, and I enjoy doing that. But that was really a challenge for me. So that was my reason number 2. All right, reason number 3, which is the one who got the most comments on my post when I shared this in the Camino de Santiago group and on my own profile on social media. I was like, okay, everybody's focusing on that one detail. But I usually don't talk about this topic because I quite honestly don't want to talk about it. I don't want to shed light about it, and I sometimes prefer not to see it because it just makes my life easier. But in this case, I really have to share this experience. So I have experienced racism in Spain. Wow. I'm originally from Morocco. We know Morocco and Spain have been having problems for centuries, and recently there's a lot of illegal immigrants moving to Spain. I guess this is a political problem. I am not sure. I actually quite don't care. I just wanted to get accommodation, and I got denied accommodation on a couple occasions, and I never thought this was based on a skin color thing or on racism until I tested out with my own very white friend. And that's where I was like, okay, now this is some bullshit. My friend arrived in Burgos actually to get a place in this hotel. We couldn't find anything. Finally, this hotel said, okay, we got one room available. It's 30 euros, you in. My friend didn't know how to speak the language, so she grabbed me outside while I was waiting for her. I arrived there with her, and the guy looked at me and he says, I'm sorry, it's just been booked through booking.com. So far, so good. Except that right before that, when I arrived to talk to him, he said to me, wait outside, which found very rude. Then my friend looked at me and she said, I didn't have to wait outside. Fine. I go up to the front desk. He talks to me again very rudely, barely sharing eye contact. That could also be a cultural thing. Now, mind you, I speak perfectly Spanish, so I'm not uneducated. I can have a conversation and I can totally make a reservation for a hotel. And then at that same moment, another lady, white woman, blonde, blue eyes, just got right next to me with her passport, and he also did not ask her to step out the booth of the area. And again, my friend looked at me and was like, oh my God, this is so ridiculous. And here's the worst part. Right after we left, we tried again, and another person, white person, tried to get a room, and they got a room. So that, you can call it what you want. I know racism when I see it. I've lived it. I smell it. I was raised in Belgium and I dealt with racism my whole life. I grew up in the States. I also dealt with racism there. So this is, again, my own opinion. A lot of people would say, well, there's no racism on the Camino. I beg the difference. I also think that a lot of albergues, not all of them, I met wonderful people, but I also have seen a lot of people working at albergues who didn't really like the pilgrims. They just was there because money was good, in my opinion, and they were doing their jobs. But many places I didn't feel welcome. It happened to me again in Spain on the Camino, where I asked for direction and I was completely ignored. I also said good morning many times to people who completely ignore me, but then they said hello to my white friends. I mean, it was beyond ridiculous to the point that I couldn't ignore it.
It's ridiculous.
And that is really a problem, because then you don't feel welcome, and then you're not focusing on doing your own Camino, you're focusing on all the outside problems that there is. So that was my third reason why I quit. Now, I'm not saying if I take maybe the Caminos Portuguese, it might be better, and I don't know. All I know is what I experienced. I was really not enjoyable, and at the end I was like, why am I here? Why am I spending my money here? I just don't want to be here. I don't enjoy this. And so I left. Alright, so the next reason why I quit, it's because to me this was overpriced. So I'll give you an example. Before I left, obviously I made a budget and I was reading about albergues and private rooms, and I was like, okay, I can get a bed for 14 bucks if I stay in an albergue and maybe 30 bucks if I do a private room. So I budgeted for that. But then in the end, I paid a lot more. But not only that, I find myself eating in the morning, at noon, in the afternoon. I mean, I was eating 3 times a day, eating out. These are the things I'm not really used to, and that's money that I don't really want to spend. And I understand. I'm doing the Camino. I went to grocery shopping when I could, and I put some snack on the go. I get all this, but overall, when I looked at my budget, I spent a lot more than planned. Wearing the same clothes every day. At some point I needed a new shirt, so I went and bought a new shirt. Then my sneakers got really bad, so I bought another pair of sneakers. Obviously all this is my own choices and my own responsibilities, but I really thought that for me doing the Camino would have been something peaceful where I can focus on myself and my thoughts and not worry about all the extra stuff. And then in the end I ended up spending a lot more money. Also at night you want to be social. If you are in a big city, then you want to meet with your friends, and you drink, you eat, all of that adds up. So for me, it was way overpriced, or I would say I spent a lot more money than I had planned. And the last reason why I quit the Camino, it's because I ended up having some very, very painful blisters where I couldn't walk anymore. And I was very careful at the beginning. I didn't have blisters the first 5 days, and I put all of the recommendation, anti-glide. At night I would massage my feet. I heard Vaselina, I heard put oil, put this, put this, put this. I've done everything. I still ended up with blisters, and I think my major mistake, and I didn't know, is when I had the blister I put a Compeed on my blisters, and I was fine that day. Actually I walked 32 kilometers that day. And then my friend, who I thought was my friend, was with me on the Camino, told me, yeah, you're supposed to remove the Compeed at the end of the day. I was like, are you sure? And I was trying to remove it, and I could see that my skin was, glued with Compeed. I was like, there's no way. And anyways, she even gave me a pair of scissors. I cut the Compeed, it took the skin away, and that was the most dumb thing I ever done. Because then my blister was open, it was bleeding, and it was very, very painful. From that on, I had already dealt with all the other reasons, so I was like, this is some BS. I don't like this, In the end, in the Camino, the only thing that I really enjoyed was the walk, and then everything else I didn't find it enjoyable, and I was asking myself, well, why am I even here, So that's it for the negative reasons why I did quit the Camino. I'm still proud I did it. I walked from Pamplona to Burgos. I took some breaks and skips in between, but I still challenged myself to walk up to 32 kilometers a day was the most. And I found it really fascinating and fantastic to be able to do this, to walk in nature, to be present with nature. And although I had pain in my feet, I had pain in my back, I still enjoy the walk, and maybe one day I will do it again, but I know for me I would not do the Camino Frances again. I may do the Portuguese one or a little bit more quiet Camino. In the Camino I met wonderful people from all over the world, from the US to you name it, every country. I had laughed, we were dancing and drinking and singing, and I had amazing times with people that I met across the Camino that I know I probably will never see again. That was really a wonderful experience. I don't regret doing it because I think the Camino is still an amazing experience and you should do it. And what I've learned during this experience is that you only know once you try. So now that I've done it, I have no regrets. Of course, I had planned to go 25 to 30 days. But after 10 days, I realized it wasn't for me, and I wasn't pushing it neither, because at that point, it was not an enjoyment anymore. I was just pushing myself and I didn't like it. I hope you like this video. Please let me know in the comment below if you resonate with this. Also note, I will remove any hatred or any negative comments on this post, because I got a few on my other post. I don't want to create arguments here. This is just someone who shares her experience of the Camino as a person of color, an immigrant from Morocco who happened to walk through the Caminos in Spain. And I hope you will be inspired by my story, or you learn something new. And I hope you will decide also to do the Camino and have your own experience so you can judge for yourself. Again, thank you so much. Please like, share, and subscribe, or share this video for somebody who think might need it. I'll send you lots of love for Germany, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.